Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris.
Jason Shiers. Did I get it right?
Almost. Close. Shiers.
Shiers. The different accents, right? Welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. You are a psychotherapist, life coach, author, speaker, and so much more, because I have done, not a ton of stalking, but a little poking around. And how about you first take it away and tell us a little bit more about you, and we'll go from there.
Sure. I've got all these titles, but I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with titles. It makes people listen. It seems like if you've got these titles that you might have something interesting to say. But on the grand scheme of things, I just consider myself another human on the journey, And I have a cringy kind of feel about titles, because they don't really seem like the very thing that's going to make a difference in people's life, And I only got those titles to help myself. It's kind of like, it was purely that. It was a journey to finding peace within myself. And the only reasons I did trainings and qualifications and so on was because I came to a turning point in my life of desperation where I was. And I'd been to therapy, and I thought, well, if I could really understand this therapy thing, I could probably help myself more, so I must go ahead and do that. And that's just how it showed up on my journey. And that's just the thread that was given to me that I followed, And I can't even say that my work is a particular modality anymore. It's like, even though I trained as a traditional psychodynamic therapist, in my big qualification, I wouldn't say my work is that. It's a mixture of spiritual insight, realization of somatic experiencing and trauma-based responses, and and therapy and coaching all together. So obviously I came to that place from having a life of I don't know what you could call it. Intense learning, you could call it. Intense learning. Some people might call it chaos. Some people might call it disaster. Some people might call it painful. Some people might call it a lonely existence. It's like, but you could also say it was an intense learning experience, because I had no choice but to learn a lot about survival, about myself, about escapism, about the mind-body's learned way of coping with adversity, in response to childhood trauma and stuff. I lived those things. That's how I learned about them. It's not that I knew anything about them intellectually or theoretically or conceptually. I just lived them, And it was only later in my life that I became my own guinea pig, so to speak. It was kind of like taking my own personal and internal experience and reflections and so on, into my work, and really sort of understanding, what is suffering for people. Why do people suffer? Why do people escape their human experience? Like, is it just an inherent thing? Is it something we're afflicted with? Is it a response to trauma and adversity? Is it hereditary? Where does that come from? And I was only motivated for those questions because I needed the answers for myself. It was not really a quest to save the world, or anything like that, because of my big heart. Even though I do have a big heart, I do love helping people, but it was really primarily just about being able to reconnect with myself and to stop suffering and to stop being in pain. So I don't know how much more you want me to talk about the details of that kind of journey, or like, what do you want to get into?
The things that I jotted down is, why do people suffer? And number two, why do they escape? That I really want to touch on, because you have a story. And it's a story, addiction and what got you to this place of suffering. One thing that you did mention that I also just want to point out, and I've got this written down so we can come back to it, is that, we want to help the world. We want to save the world. And I feel like so many times people that are like that, the number one person that really needs helping and saving is themselves. But we escape that And we think by helping and saving the world that we will, somehow, and if we're using the word suffer and escape, that will lessen our suffering.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I'm sure there's a time when I was unhelpful to people, as a helper, even though I was masquerading with a title and a professional kind of position. I didn't really know what was going on. And that was part of what fueled my own journey, that I got, I could see that I could sit in the dark with somebody, I could hear them, I could feel them, I could sense them. I could empathize with them, but I didn't know, like all they wanted was to be happy. And I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Like all any person wants who goes to therapy or coaching or anything is to be happy, is to live happier, have more peace in their life. That's it. It's at the end of every desire chain. I want a new car. Why? Well, I like driving. Why? Well, because it feels good. Why? It's kind of like when you get to the end of this chain, every single time it's about happiness. It's kind of like it's built into every one of us as a innate design of the system, calmness, joy, and contentment. It's part of who we are. But we get distracted from that in this. That's where I could talk about my own experience of trauma, of childhood adversity, of my dad going out and being killed in an accident and not coming back, but as a small child, you can't rationalize that, or kind of justify, oh, well, it was, he was killed. All that you know is, because you're living an emotional and a perceptive experience of being human at 5 years old. You're not full of information and understanding about life is tough. Sometimes people die. You don't know all this stuff yet. You just live an emotional, in the moment experience as a small child. So all that I know is that he left and he didn't come back. Yeah. And I know the internal experience of that. And then I know the response to that, the escapism that I experienced, that would have been in the mid-70s, and back then it was there was no internet, there was no big understanding of trauma and adversity, and the psychiatric system was kind of the way to get help for people who are suffering or struggling or mental problems. And everything was classified, categorized, and diagnosed, put into a classification of type of what's wrong, categorization, what is it, does it fit into some sort of standard definition, and a diagnosis of types like depression, anxiety, whatever you call it. There's no looking at the root cause. There's no looking at what goes on. So we diagnose and classify and categorize the symptom. In our current medical model and psychiatric model, we diagnose and classify the symptom, and we label people, so to speak. It's not viciously or maliciously, but people adopt a label because it gives them a momentary relief from their, realization. Oh, that's what's wrong with me. That's the momentary relief. So people kind of like to receive a label, but then they go around saying this label is the reason for all these things that I do. My depression is the reason it's dark. My anxiety is the reason I'm scared to go out. It's the other way around. It's not that way. It can't possibly work that way, because our current system is a system of description. You could exchange the word diagnosis and description interchangeably. It is a description of what's going on. It's not a cause. It couldn't possibly be a cause, because it's only ever a description. It's if I have a set of symptoms and I go to the doctor and I say, here's what I've been doing, and here's how I've been feeling, and here's how long I've been feeling it for. And he says to me, well, tell me tell me the intensity of this, and how long has that been happening for, and how many times have you done this, and I answer all the questions in the wrong or the right way, depending on which way you're looking at it. And he scores me up and qualifies me for, 5 of the 9 criteria for a particular diagnosis, and he says to me, okay, you've got this, whatever this is, could be depression, anxiety, so on, insert any number of diagnoses. And then I go away believing that this thing, because he's a doctor and he's told me so, that this thing that he's told me is the cause of all my suffering.
Yeah.
But it was only ever a description. It could never have been the cause, because all he did was subjectively interpreted the information that I gave him, turned it into a system, looked along a list of traits, qualified me by ticking one or two of the list, and then gave me the outcome of that. It was never nothing that was wrong with me. There was nothing internal there. There was no real thing called depression. You can't cut me open and find, oh, there's the depression. It doesn't exist. It's just an opinion on a behavior. So I was in that system. I was diagnosed with depression at 10 years old. Given medication, pretty forcefully, I would say, because I certainly didn't want to take medication as a kid, and no one ever looked at the cause. No one ever really looked at what's really going on. What's this disconnection from self that happens? What's this kind of avoidance technique, these coping mechanisms? Because what's diagnosed, what's labeled, what's given that description is the coping mechanism, is the symptom. It's only ever a symptom. So whatever the current model is, it's just a descriptive model of the symptoms of what's really going on with traumatic and developmental issues, that we kind of have adopted or learned along the way of our upbringing.
Yeah.
I think what are you hearing there? What's interesting for you?
Well, a couple of things. First, the whole description to the diagnosis, and that, I feel too, then once we have this diagnosis, which a lot of times that's what we're after, like you said, it gives you that temporary relief, or oh, good, now I know why I feel like I do. And now that I have this diagnosis, it's my identity, it's my label. I am, it's not just I'm dealing with this right now. This is who I am. I am full of anxiety, or I've got this, or I am depressed, or that's just who I am. And it makes it so permanent and stuck. And then again, it's, instead of trying to deal with it, then we try to escape it, which leads me into the next thing that I really want to dive into, is addictions and stuff, because I know you were there, and I guess that's kind of my next question is, so where did that kind of spiral start to happen? I know you said that your dad had passed when you were 5, so
it was like an escalation of erratic behavior, and sort of attempts to find escape from myself, because the system, as I call it, the body-mind system, it's kind of it's intelligent, it understands, it's resilient, it has ways of coping and so on. And addiction is a coping mechanism for internal dis-ease, and so is all the erratic behavior, the stealing, the crimes, the running away, the truanting from school that I did. It's all an attempt to escape what looks like my world, which is going on inside of me. It's not outside of me. It's just innocently to me, it looks outside of me. It looks like I've been handed a bad life. I've lost my dad. Nothing's going my way. My life's going to turn out shit. Nobody really cares. Nobody supported me through this grief. Nobody else can cope with it. Everyone else is struggling as well. What hope is there? So it looks like my external world is hopeless. But I didn't know then that was my internal world. It was not my external world. It was nothing to do with external circumstances. It was everything to do with the lived experience of being me, which is happening inside the mind. It's not happening in your external circumstances.
I love that you said that it was your internal circumstances, because really, truly, our beliefs are just thoughts that we think on repeat. And then the more you think them, you become them. And it's not there wasn't external, help or love or support or things like that. But when you're internally thinking, if you're hopeless, or, whatever you're thinking inside that keeps you stuck there, you can't see what is out there that can help you.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it kind of, it leans towards the problem with the whole medical, psychiatric, and 12-step models, you know, as in recovery models for addiction, is that like you adopt a new belief about yourself, you know, like that's what it is. And like it's a better lie. The recovery models of traditional ways are better than killing yourself with crack cocaine, for example, you know, but it's still a lie. It's still another lie. It's still an adopting of another belief as a way of overcoming something that wasn't true. And it can become a limitation. This is where you're kind of forced into going inwardly on your journey and questioning the truth, what's really true, because people who go to 12-step meetings for years believe that's their identity and so on, and they can never, what's the right word? They can never break out of that limitation that they've been given. You know, it's paradoxical because in some way it saves your life. It saved my life. But in another way, at some point along the way on your journey to yourself, to your true self, like it's a limitation because beliefs are not true. You know, it's like, so that's an important point, you know, about how, I mean, and in our suffering days, you know, going back to the question at the start about suffering, like that's a big part of it too, you know, like I believe that my life is terrible and that everyone's against me, the world is against me and no one cares and everyone hates me, and I create every scenario possible to say to myself, see, I told you so. See, I told you so. See, everyone lets me down. See, no one understands me. See, nobody cares. And that enables me to stay in my victim story, you know, even though I've got a real justified reason to be a victim. You know, I've lost somebody very close to me. The victim story is just you know, it's a precursor for suffering. It's like an allowance, makes it okay, a justification for suffering. But suffering is shit, regardless of whether you're a real victim or not. You don't want that. Nobody wants that, you know?
Well, and I think the thing is I don't know how you can find your journey back to yourself until you realize that you're really only a victim to yourself and your own outlook of, you know, everybody does this to me or this always happens. It's that, whether it's just the little things of you're always thinking, oh, this person thinks bad about me, or big things of, you know, tragedy always happens to me, or I always get the short end of the stick, until you stop being your own victim to your own thoughts. How do you can't get back home.
Yeah. It's true. Like something has to, I mean, like one of the things I wrote in my book, which isn't published yet, but it's in the process of being published, is that like, two things that I think are interesting, like about that is that, when somebody you know gets a terminal illness, maybe cancer or something happens, they get in a car crash and life is, you have a instant perspective change, right? And life is all of a sudden kind of put in front of you in a different way. You kind of realize our mortality, your own mortality, other people's mortality, right? In those moments, can dissolve years of feuds, you know, it can dissolve years of resentment. It can, you know, like all of a sudden you can just love somebody again. You can connect to them again. You know, it's kind of like when you haven't talked for years in the face of that. So it kind of shows that something, you know, the other thing I like to talk about is placebos in the change, you know, when people don't take anything and they get an improvement in their mental health. What is that, you know? And the same thing, what is that when somebody close to you dies or gets terminally ill that brings you closer to them? It's possible, right? Just those two things show that it's possible. It can happen. You can break down years of beliefs and ideas, you know, it's like in a second based on these particular kind of things that happen if you look at them. So not always through life force events like that, you know. Small cracks can appear in your beliefs about self, you know, or ideas, or in spiritual seeking, in meditation, in reading, in the quiet, in sitting alone, you know, you can start to see. But it is true what you said, that you need to see that life is happening inside you, not outside of you. You know, that is always, you know, we are suffering from our own perspective. We're not suffering from any physical reality that's happening outside of us.
Thinking a lot on lately, it reminds me of this is, I mean, everybody knows, you know, like the circumstances outside of you, we don't have control on. I don't have control over the weather. I don't have control about how necessarily people treat me or what they say or, you know, all of this, but I have control over my life experience, which is how I want to interpret everything. I can have that, like, everything is doomsday, reading into everything that, people say or how they treat me, or, the world is gone crazy, or, there's tragedy everywhere. Or I can look at or know that I want my life experience. I mean, I don't want to sum it up in this one word of happiness with a bow on it, but really that's what we're all seeking. Like you said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? It all comes down to because I want to be happy, or I think it's going to make me happy. And I feel like every moment of every day, your life is your experience, and you can just choose what is the happiest path. And I think when we get in line with the journey is our experience, and if I choose that I just want to be as happy as I can, I don't know. I mean, it's small nuggets. It's one day, 1 minute at a time. But for me, what is it? I mean, I forget how many thousands of thoughts come into our head every day. But I've also, it's like, is it 60,000 thoughts or something like that? And like 90% or 80% of them are negative or critical or shaming or full of, like, they're just pessimistic and all of this and that. That's one thing. But then also the other thing is you have like 16 seconds to grab a hold of a thought to kind of like change it and wipe it out. And I think it's kind of a fun game to just constantly be thinking about what I'm thinking about, because in that second, it's almost like that game. I have 16 seconds. Do I want this thought? Does it make me feel happy or sad? Happy or mad? Happy or resentful? Happy or anxious? Happy? And it's just in that split second, this makes me feel blah. Then think about something that makes me feel good. It's not even necessarily that thought that I have to change, but it's like, get rid of that thought. And I don't know, think about one little thing. Like for me, my happy place is the beach. I love sitting on the beach, staring at the water, put myself there. And if it helps just the tiniest of bit, and it's those constant baby steps, and I'm going to wrap this back around because I want to talk a little bit more about addictions, but I think it's that every split second of the day, you have that choice. Do I want to suffer, or do I truly want to do something? Like, to me, it's so powerful. It's just empowering to know that it's me. It's all on me. It's on me. And I want to throw out addictions, because so many people, when we say addiction, they come to me, it's like the big two: drugs, alcohol. But we live in a society now where it's like drugs, alcohol, gambling, gaming, porn, social media, other people, food, exercise. I mean, there's a gazillion more. And like, as you had mentioned, it's escapism. And I think it's just a sad thing that we are all, instead of living our life, like, we have one shot at it, and we're here to just have fun, right? I mean, I don't think we were born to just be miserable. But yet it seems like more and more and more people, busyness is an addiction, but we're escaping through all of these addictions to avoid suffering, and it's causing more pain and suffering, not just for us, but in our relationships. And so I would like you to throw some expertise and thoughts and things on that. In that list, I will admit, I've either had some of those addictions or currently try to, be mindful about managing those addictions. And I've also affected personally, whether that's family, friends, or things like that, by those addictions. And I see how it really does ruin the person, but it ruins a lot of, relationships too. And I'm even going to throw the sex addiction out there, because I just thought of that one too. And I have a little list here, because this is real stuff.
Yeah. I hear you. And like people sometimes ask, is this one a healthy addiction, And I'm like, no, there's no healthy addiction, there is none. And the mind loves to see like a linear kind of map of what's going on. Well, this has happened in childhood, so this was cause, and now this is the result. And if I just do this, I'll undo that, and that'll be fixed, And there is no such linear or kind of mentally coherent kind of structure or subject that I can kind of put on the whole addiction thing, like why and what happens and so on. But a large percentage of what we escape from is unconscious. It's just playing out somatically, and it's playing out physically, not necessarily clearly in our thoughts, like, hey, I don't like this, and now I feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to go away and take drugs to make myself feel better. It's not like that, It's not like a real obvious thing. Quite often, people who are already in the psychological habit and the physical habit of using or process addictions and so on will just do it kind of completely obliviously. Right, just feel the urge and just do it. They will never have even sat down and broke down this stuff. But some people will also come to me and say, hey, I've got this addiction. My life's pretty amazing. I've got a great relationship. My family life's good, but I'm struggling with cocaine and pornography, for example. It's kind of like, well, I know for a fact that your life isn't great if that's what you're struggling with. It's kind of like, I know you think it is, and I know you're telling me it is, but I need to ask you a few questions to see what you say to me. To one, know if you're going to tell me the truth, and two, see if you actually even know yourself, like what's going on. Because sometimes it takes some diving in and asking the right questions. So, well, how are the relationships with your partner? Well, we don't really get on very well at the moment, but it's okay. It's normal, It's kind of like, yeah, my kids, no, I haven't seen them for a little while. It's like things like this come out, in this conversation, even when people say, my life's great, they'll tell you that at first, because we're very much into protecting this image of ourselves when we meet new people and looking good, and making it sound like we know something, but we just need a little help somewhere to fix this little thing that's going on, but what's really happening is your life's falling apart, but you don't want to admit that or say that. So going back to that, right, it's kind of like, so developmentally, like as in we need love and nurturing in the same volume that we need air and food, as children, and most of our parents fell short of that mark. Mm-hmm. No blame, no criticism, no pointing the finger. It's not about that. It's about seeing that innocently they just did the best they could with what they knew about themselves at the time, and some people might even argue that, especially if they've been through abuse or sexual abuse or violence, I don't think they did the best they could. But like those were their coping mechanisms, like with whatever they went through. And generationally, this stuff is passed down and down and down and so on. And I think now we're in a good position because we can there's people that know what's going on, that can see what's going on and can highlight it, and we can break those chains. So all of us receive a level of adversity, like that's the human system, the autonomic nervous system, like processes in the moment. It's kind of like it's either in overwhelm, it's kind of like shut down, closed, contracted, open, expanded. It's kind of like without cognitive knowledge, if it's pre-verbal, or something like that as a child. So that's developmental stuff that happens. Then there's what people define as big T events, violence, rape, death, abuse, or repetitive experiences of those things, that cause conditioning of the body, conditioning of the mind. It causes the creation of unhealthy ego structure and desire to find solution outside of self. It's like, because it really looks like we're under-resourced or something wrong with us, unworthy or unlovable, whatever ideas we create in our psychological makeup as a result of the level of adversity that we receive. So then knowing all that, like people can thrive. Like I think you mentioned before about somebody thriving and still having addictions. People actually can thrive as a part of their addictive nature. It's kind of like they feel not good enough, for an example, so they become really good at business. I've had so many clients, male, middle-aged, very successful financially, wife has left, children have grown up, feeling of emptiness and loneliness has come about now all of a sudden. It's like the realization that chasing money or being successful in the outside world does not equal healthy internal world. It doesn't mean that. So you can become very good at something on the back of escaping yourself. So even that success, so to speak, material success, success at many things will come as a result of the disconnection from self internally based on that level of adversity that was received that I talked about. For some people, it's just straightforward, I'm going to smoke crack cocaine. For other people, it's I'm going to build a great life for myself and become really successful. And for everyone else, it's some version of that in the middle. And anyone suffering, anyone struggling has some internal dis-ease that they're escaping from. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to escape it,
Yeah. When you said that with your example of, the wife's left, children are grown, you achieve, you go after the business and things like that. And I think that I see this a lot in our society. And I mean, even in my own community, that it is my net worth equals my self-worth. And I'm not going to just pick on guys. I mean, it's in women and stuff too. But
Yep.
it's these, how do we chase our self-worth outside of us? The more I dive into a lot of this stuff, I feel like self-worth is at the lack of, like, feeling unworthy, undeserving and not valuable is, I don't know. I mean, you tell me if you see this or if where this lands. I feel like it's one of those things that we lack that, and like addictions, really we use this stuff, everything outside of us, to fill all those voids. And like you said, I mean, it's an unconscious thing. No one sits there just like, oh, I feel pretty worthless. I don't really like myself much. I think I'll start snorting coke today or shoot some heroin, right? And it happens to try to fill these voids. But I feel like our addictions now are, I mean, even just binging. I mean, it seems to kind of be the thing, like, hey, I binged on Netflix all weekend long. And it, but it's almost like, we laugh about it, but what are you trying to escape? What void are you trying to fill? And it's so hard for us to look at ourselves and really be honest with ourselves, because it hurts, number one, right? To discover, well, why do I need all of that? I mean, I even think just escaping our present and the people around us sometimes, because like you said, like, when you really start asking the questions, what's going on in your relationships and things like that, I mean, are you distant from the people you live with in your own home? Are you even just trying to escape into another room because it's just too hard to be around? Or, and it's like, I think it takes some really, you got to just really be accountable and responsible and finally reach that point where it's like, but I'm miserable living this way and I want to be happy. And, but it might be hard at first to really face this, whatever it is, right? I'm trying to escape. And
yeah, we got to come back to that. Life is happening inside and not outside, right? It's kind of like, then what is really happening in the world is, I'm getting a reflection of parts of myself that I am not okay with, that I don't like, from my external circumstances, that meaning people, the number in my bank account, the size of my waist, physical waist, my body that I don't like, or I hate, or I want to change, or how good my girlfriend looks or doesn't look, and what reflection that is of me, and so on. It's kind of like all these things and 100 more things as well. What car I drive, how big my house is, how many bedrooms I've got, what's the size of my garden, whether I've got a ride-on lawnmower or not. All these things, you know, it's kind of like you can keep going forever. Like, what do they say about my internal world? And my need for those things outside of myself is just an obvious measure of my level of connection to myself and my knowing of myself, because all those things are giving me is a reflection of something that's inside, because that's all that's ever happening is inside of me. It's not happening outside of me. It's not really about getting more bedrooms, a bigger car, and a higher number in the bank account, because that is literally just a number on a screen. You know, it's kind of like these days, if we're looking at an app, for example, you know, your bank account app that tells you how much money you got, it's just a number on a screen. Like, how can a number on a screen dictate your day? Nothing's happening. It's just a number on a screen. You know, that's it. Literally a number on a screen. So it's like, okay, you may say, well, that's the accessible cash that I've got to live the life that I want to live. But like right now in this moment, nothing's happening. And you're still feeling as a result of this number on the screen, like, oh, if only I had more, then I'd be okay. Now, like, you can take it as simple as like, if there's anything in your life that you believe you had more of would make your life better, i.e. in the future, if I get this, no matter what it is, lose weight, more money, better house, more it's not true. It can't possibly be true that life can't happen later. It can't happen in the future. There is no destination of happiness. You know, and it's worth, you mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning, like, what happens in the pursuit of things, like, because it really looks like to some people, oh, well, when I got my new car, I was really happy. You know, it's kind of like, so like what happens is, we live in a state of internal dis-ease, you know, and we cope with it by judging, blaming, criticizing, complaining about the world, looking at other people, how they're doing better, feeling bad about ourselves. That's our coping mechanism for our internal dis-ease. So, we decide to get a new car, you know, and it's kind of like, looks like this is the next thing. Oh my God, I can't wait to get my new car. I'm telling my friends about it. I get a new car next week. So good. I'm so happy. I've been waiting so long for this new car. Like, so we go on the day and we get the new car, right? What happens, right? Are we really happy because we got a new car? No. What we're happy is because the internal chatter has stopped.
Yeah.
And we return to our natural state of joy and ease and comfort. That noise about getting a new car and it's going to be great and all that has stopped. It's not there anymore. And the body, you know, it kind of goes, oh, God. And then we drive off in the new car, and then we drive down the high street and we see a jacket in the window. Oh my God, if I get that jacket, my life would be so much better. And we're off again in the same cycle, right? The mind is busy again. The dis-ease returns, the discomfort, the escapism, the thinking about other people being better. And when I get this, I'll be happy. So that's all that happens, you know. It just looks to people that things, houses, cars, weight loss, relationships, create better lives. And I'm not saying I'm not making a distinction here that you don't need anything and you should live in a box. That's not what I'm saying. You know, it's kind of like, I'm saying enjoy all those things, do them all, but just realize that they are not the source of your true happiness, you know?
Yeah, because you can, I've heard this throughout, like, just all kinds of different avenues for years, that, you know, sometimes the poorest countries out there, there's been all of, you know, the studies, they have the happiest people. And sometimes wealthiest countries, like America, has the most depression, anxiety, addiction, all of these things. And I think that's worth looking at. It is, if you're happy to begin with, and you're, you know, it's that connectedness and, you know, thing from inside, then all of the other stuff, the things, enhances that. But getting that, we have it backwards. We feel like once we have that, then we get the feeling inside. It's no, the feeling comes within first, and then that stuff has the capability of enhancing it. One thing I do say is the smaller ones, and, you know, a couple minutes ago you hit on a lot that just made me think of even more. And it was just, you know, the addiction to our image, the addiction to what people think, that drives so many of the things. It drives the titles. It drives what's, you know, in our bank account. It drives, you know, the neighborhoods. I mean, all of this sort of stuff. Not entirely. I mean, and like you said, we're not saying, oh, you got to live in a box. That's not it. But it's your why. Yeah. It's your why. Why But I think of kind of like a big addiction for so many people right now is, and I admit I struggle with this sometimes too. It's that addiction to busyness. Like if you feel like you're not constantly going, producing, doing, then what is it? Like I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable. Why do we feel this need to and if you do, where do we begin? Like where does someone begin? I guess with any of these addictions, whatever it is.
Yeah. It's like when people ask me what differentiates my work, I would say that my work is a model of health and that addiction is intelligence, and most of the work out there in the world is that addiction is a model of illness, and they help you find what's wrong with you and tell you how to fix it. And I'm completely the opposite of that. What I see is that any addiction is it's the intelligence of the body-mind system. It is an alarm clock alerting you to that there's part of you that needs your attention.
Yeah.
Now, to most people, that sounds so abstract. Like, what does that even mean? Part of me that needs my attention. Like, which part? Whereabouts? It's that's how much reflection and introspection people have ever done in their lives. The words are even meaningless. It's kind of like it's like I'm speaking a foreign language sometimes. To say those things. But slowly, and kind of sometimes quickly, people can have insights into themselves. They start looking at their own internal dialogues, their own internal processes and so on, and what's going on. And like you said before about having it backwards, my work with addiction is nothing to do. I don't even talk about the addiction, it's kind of like I look at what's going on in the life, the relationships, the relationship with self, the level of contentment and so on. And then when you work that way, addiction will no longer be a problem.
Yeah.
When you find ease and comfort within yourself, and because nobody happy ever woke up and looked out the window and goes, "Oh, it's a beautiful day today. I think I'm going to use crack cocaine." Nobody did that. It just didn't happen. It's kind of like, so you can see that it's just a response to your internal need for comfort, which is intelligent, right? Because the body mind finds a way to cope with everything, all levels of adversity. No matter what happens, it finds a way to find ease and comfort,
Yeah. And I know I'm very in tune, like with myself, like body. I always think about this, your body, mind, spirit, mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health. And when it all comes down to me kind of equals your own well-being. I mean, it's that full circle. And when you are living at that optimal well-being, we'll say, I can see like things, and I'll say even kind of aside from addictions, but things that would normally bother you don't bother you. Things that would cause you, stress or anxiety or to get you worked up, I mean, they just don't. And I see now, just with what you said, I mean, that's just kind of what it made me think of, like even with addictions, I like that, like the intellectual, the wisdom, the knowledge, it's kind of like a cool weapon because I don't know, that's kind of really it's really empowering, and how you can help yourself that way. It's like the focus is off the addiction and just on your own internal well-being. That's what I'm getting from you. Yeah. I like that. I mean, I like it. So
where did the idea that there's something wrong with us come from? It's financially motivated, it's illness model, it's kind of like people, big pharmaceutical industries and so on are invested in us being broken, and it's kind of like the whole model of illness. I mean, there's many books documenting the development of psychiatric disorders and so on, like the task force and so on, and what happened in those DSM editions and the ICND kind of creation and stuff. There's much stuff been written about that, it's like about the whole model of illness, but like people are invested in us being broken. And so when we talk about addiction, there's a a societal standard connotation of that we're talking about something that's wrong with somebody. Here's what's wrong with them. How do we fix it? But and quite often I've been on podcasts going, yeah, but can you give me some steps to help somebody, some tips, some help? How do they fix it? It's like, so the whole thing is the whole conversation is on the premise that there's something wrong with them that needs fixing. It's kind of like, and quite often when we've got an addiction, we just want to stop. I just need to stop this thing that's wrong with me that I keep doing, that I don't understand why I'm doing it. And it's like, and I'm saying, what about if we look at it differently? It's kind of like, because we can't fix that. You can't just take away your coping mechanism and expect to fix the cause. All that will happen is it's like plugging a leak with your thumb. It's kind of like it'll just come out somewhere else, and then you put another finger and then it comes out somewhere else, and you stick a t-shirt on there and it comes out it's like that. It just keeps coming. So we're looking like the whole model of illness. It's financially motivated. It's not true. It is something that allows the system to categorize what's wrong with people and give them a treatment for that thing that's wrong with it. But it's not helping people in the long run, because it's just giving them a new belief about themselves, which has limitations and doesn't work for everyone. So what I'm saying is look in a different direction. It's kind of like, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. Probably if you've been struggling for a while, probably most professionals you've been to have classified you and categorized you in some way and told you what's wrong with you and told you what you need to do to fix yourself. I'm saying none of that's true. It's kind of like, what's really important to look at is kind of what's going on inside yourself, like truly, without this model of illness and brokenness, and see the intelligence of addiction, see the well-being that is within, beneath the waves of experience, so to speak, see the truth of who we are. Like, just to put a cap on that, like when we talked about kids and playing, like kids don't need to be taught how to play, do they? Like you don't teach a baby, here's the book on playing now. You spend a year learning how to play and then you can go and play. It's not like that. They just know. No. It's built into them, right? They're born with it. They know how to play. They know how to be in the moment. They know how to be present. They know how to enjoy and have fun. They're not thinking about why they didn't get a chocolate milk last week or something. It's kind of like, it's not like that. So it's just naturally within people. And then that's conditioned out of us. It's conditioned out of us by this societal expectations and structure and money and pharmaceutical, all this bullshit, and, so we just naturally know. So what I'm saying is to wonder, how do we return to that natural, playful, present, capable self, who knows how to have joy and contentment and fun in the moment. It's in us. It was born in us,
Yeah, stop escaping ourselves. Just go back. It's like we're home. We're home. It's that. Then it just reminds me, and I don't want to go down this road because that's a whole nother topic, but it's a lot of that inner child work, or just getting back to, it's, parenting yourself as you go all day long. And I think we don't, we use addictions as maybe our own babysitters that, we don't need them. I really enjoy this conversation. It's really got me thinking about a lot, and I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
Your insight is incredible. It gave me and hopefully our listeners a ton to think about. And I think it's very empowering to listen, especially it's that perspective that I think we just have more power over our lives than we give ourselves credit for. And, stepping into that and our own well-being. Yeah. I thank you for that.
Yeah, the limitations we have are self-inflicted. We couldn't possibly know our potential, and we couldn't possibly know our limitations. And any you believe you have are not true. They're made up, and they are a fabrication of your own mind in order to keep you safe. And it's like the potential for all human beings, for infinite. That's what I call my book, The Infinite Recovery Project, is because it's infinite. It's I can't put a limit on it. I don't want to put a limit on it. I don't want to put a description even so much on it. It's yours and it's you, and you don't have to subscribe to any limited recovery models, that don't make sense to you. If they do, go ahead, but if they don't, you don't need to, you don't have to, there's other ways.
Exactly. No, I agree. definitely. Where can people find you?
For my podcast, Misunderstandings of the Mind, which has a lot of conversations about traditional psychological misunderstandings, and kind of started off in a very spiritual kind of awakening way, lots of conversations about that. And then more later episodes were more trauma based, about looking at the relationship between spirituality and trauma. You know, do we ever transcend the human experience? Do we wake up to a point where everything becomes blissful? Or are we in this conditioned physical realm, you know, as a body and a human being? Even though we are spiritual, the mind is a spiritual entity, not a physical entity as I see it. So that's a whole range of conversations through all that stuff, and looking at all traditional psychological stuff like depression, addiction, anxiety, relationships, connection, who are we, and things like that. That's, you can find me through that. And my addiction treatment website is called infiniterecoveryproject.com. And yeah, that's just more of kind of what I've been talking about.
Yeah, amazing. No, I'm fascinating, all fascinating. That's how I'm going to wrap it up. Fascinating. So yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jason. And yeah, thank you.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Authentically Raw podcast. I really appreciate you. And it is my sincere hope that you get value out of each and every conversation. And I would love it if you could leave a review. It helps tremendously. Also, I'm a life coach, in case you didn't know. Visit my website at jamieberris.com to learn more. I would love to work with you, help you get through whatever it is you're going through, or help you get to wherever it is you're seeking to go. And also, one last thing, I have a life coachy kind of book. It's called Results Daily Planning and Self-Development. You can find it through my website or head straight over to Amazon. As always, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.